It's a beautiful day in this particular neighborhood. Hope it is where you all are. This is the Tulsa World Scene podcast that has, for some reason, taken on the name Fred. Normally, we try to come up with a funny acronym for those letters, but it rained last night and washed my mind clean. So I don't know what to call it other than Fred, and to introduce you to my colleagues, the lovely and talented Jimmie Tramel, and the lovelier and talented Lydia Fletcher, who is our intern for this summer, who is learning her way around Tulsa. She's already discovered that there are two Charleston's restaurants. A bit of the hard way, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I've done that before, wondering why I've been stood up and usually I don't have to understand it. I have to ask that question. But anyway, what did you discover this week about Tulsa that kind of surprised you?
So this wasn't this week. This was my first day at Tulsa World. So keep in mind, I broke my foot the day before I was supposed to move to Tulsa. I have a giant boot on my driving foot. It is not fun. It is not enjoyable. Learning to drive in it is one thing. And then I learned in Tulsa downtown, the lights go from being, your normal eye level to just on the side of the street. And that's not how it is in Northwest Arkansas at all. Like, even in our downtown area, you've got the overhead lights. And so my first day driving into downtown, I run a red light and just immediately did not even know it was there, just got really lucky. And then I turned around and I was like, oh, that was a red light. I should be more careful. And turns out I wasn't the only intern who did it, which I think is even funnier. Two of us did it on different streets that day. So I learned that. And then I learned that y'all's streets are alphabetized, which is now like my saving grace. Whenever I get lost, I'm like, okay, I know if I get to Yale or Harvard, I can figure out how to get either to Tulsa World or back to where I'm living. So if I get there, I'm good. And so I'm slowly but surely learning Tulsa streets. It's very different than Northwest Arkansas. Y'all are kind of a grid system, but with some terrible one-ways. Northwest Arkansas just is traffic circle city. It's kind of what I call it. We have so many.
There's a couple of those around town. There's one, there's the big one out Admiral and about Mingo.
Yes.
Yeah, that one I've taken my life into my hands a couple of times on that one. And then there's a smaller one downtown about 11th or 10th and Elgin, I think, that is a little kinder to navigate. You don't have people who suddenly decide, oh, I need to be in the other lane right now because there's just one lane around the thing. But well, I'm glad. Hopefully you're healing up well, and and by the time you figure out all our streets, and I'm not gonna. I probably will disillusion you that after you get to a certain point going east, they go back to numbers. So so if they talk about, well, you need to go out east, just say, I can't do that. And
that won't be happening.
And go from there. So, but anyway, well, in your perambulations this week, what have you got coming up for us for this Sunday?
So Sunday, I got to experience the numbered streets. Went all the way down to 51st to talk to Meals on Wheels of Metro Tulsa about kind of the volunteer somewhat crisis deficit they're going through despite moving into an amazing facility. So I was able to sit down with the president and CEO and then some volunteers and some clients to kind of just give everyone like an all-around look at what the organization does and then what they're going through. And I'm really excited for this one because it's the first chance I've gotten to do a multimedia piece for Tulsa World. So there's photos by Carly Booth, who is one of our photo interns, video that I shot and edited, and then obviously writing, which is mine and then edited by the whole, scene team and everyone. And so I'm really excited for that. I really like covering nonprofit work. That's actually what one of my first multimedia videos was through school. So I think it's nice to kind of let that same nonprofit topic be my first kind of career multimedia video.
You said the volunteer deficit or shortage. Is that strictly a result of the pandemic, or was that something they were experiencing before? Because I can imagine that their service was greatly or even more so in demand with the pandemic when nobody could get out.
Yeah, so pandemic really, I think the way the CEO said it was pulled back the curtain, which I think is the best like phrasing of maybe these problems were mounting already. And then once the pandemic hit, it was, oh my gosh, there's such a population in need. And they're having to navigate that. I think if I'm remembering correctly, I know in the last 5 years, they've had almost a 250% increase in need of meals and having to produce meals at a much larger volume and therefore needing drivers to go deliver them. But I believe the jump just from 2019 to 2020 went from like the 200,000s to the 700,000s. And so it was, because I sat down with the data, I looked at census data, and it was really interesting to kind of get to deep dive into numbers. I feel like that's not something in A&E we do as much, but I do love that kind of reporting as well. And so just looking at those numbers, I went in and kind of knowing there's definitely something going on. Let me get to the bottom of the story. And that's kind of what I share in the piece on Sunday of like what's really happening behind their doors.
Okay. All right. Well, Jimmie, you look this weekend, you're looking back at a film that I think a lot of people don't know came out of Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's really under the radar. We all know about The Outsiders and Rumblefish, and now Killers of the Flower Moon and August Osage County, perhaps. But people don't seem to realize that a lot of big stars, Warren Oates, Ben Johnson, Cloris Leachman, Richard Dreyfuss, Jeffrey Lewis, who was in the great Clint Eastwood movie Every Which Way But Loose, and Steve Kennelly from Dallas. All these people were, Michelle Phillips from the Mamas and the Papas. All these people were in Oklahoma to shoot Dillinger, which was released 50 years ago this month. So I'll have a look back at the Dillinger movie with all those people and talk to some locals who were extras in the film and their experiences. So James, I think you've seen the movie, but I streamed it this week and actually I found it to be a very good movie.
I try to remember if I have seen it. I remember seeing ads for it. But not knowing at the time that it was made in Oklahoma or shot partly in Oklahoma, and but I don't think, and I could be wrong, that Dillinger operated in Oklahoma. Did he? I think he was more in the Midwest, because I don't know that he got here into Oklahoma.
Oklahoma doubled for everywhere else. Like Enid was Tucson, Ardmore and Doherty and Nash and all these other places just double for Indiana or wherever they needed to be. But yeah, you're right. Oklahoma has some gangster history, but and
Sure.
How they chose Oklahoma, I don't know. But they did shoot.
Probably because they needed some place that looked a little backward, I guess. Anyway.
Well, they needed some planes to look like 1930s era,
exactly.
Which is when Dillinger was running around doing everything. But it was just kind of amazing to see.
Okay.
At the time, Ben Johnson and Cloris Leachman had just won Academy Awards for the last picture show, and then the other people, Richard Dreyfuss was getting ready to explode. It was between American Graffiti and Jaws. So really interesting, just kind of a bookmark in history.
Okay, all right. Well, speaking of a bookmark in history, I was one of the stories I've got coming this Sunday is when you think of Woody Guthrie, probably the one thing you wouldn't associate with him is disco, but at the Woody Guthrie Center opening on June 15th is an exhibit that is drawn from a book, Love Will Save the Day, by Tim Lawrence. He is a British born writer, now makes his home here in the US. That is about the rise of what became the disco culture, and how that actually grew out of the same sort of social justice ideas that fueled Woody Guthrie during his life. And he chronicles the rise of the underground dance culture. And the exhibit at the Woody Guthrie Center downtown has got a one room set up with big speakers and a turntable, and they'll be playing some of the music that was used during this period from 1970 to 1979. And it ends with there was an event at Kaminsky Park in Chicago where the White Sox play. That was the big Disco Sucks the Death to Disco, Death to Disco event. So they have that there, but the thing about it is that that really wasn't the end of disco. It just went back underground for a little while longer. It's an interesting little exhibit. One of the things is the parodies. You'll appreciate this, Jimmie. There's an Archie's comic book from disco. There's also Mad magazines and with their parodies of like Saturday Night Fever and then the Mad magazine disco special with a little plastic record with 30 minutes of mad disco music. So it'll be fun to check out.
Speaking of parodies, I'll connect this back to Lydia, the guy who voiced the duck in the Rick Dees song "Disco Duck" is from Arkansas. So that's our mission, Lydia and James, to go back and do a "Where Are They Now" on the Arkansas man who voiced the duck in the Disco Duck song.
I thought it was Rick Dees did it himself. Okay.
I think he got a pinch quacker for the Disco Duck.
Okay. Yeah, that was a sad moment in culture. I mean,
you know what? I like disco. The Bee Gees were so popular. There was such a huge album that there was just backlash. Anytime you have something popular, people just want to drag it back down again because it gets too big. And that's what happened after Saturday Night Fever. That was such a huge movie and a huge album that everybody just kind of got sick of it and wanted to go the other way. But the Bee Gees are awesome.
Oh, definitely. I absolutely. No disrespect to the Bee Gees whatsoever. I've always liked their music. And the first time I heard "Staying Alive," it was I thought this is something else, and that was something that they had started with a year or their previous album. They had started doing more
jive talking,
more dance oriented music.
Yeah,
and here's a bit of trivia that I'm hoping I remember correctly. The opening of Jive Talking was designed to do was inspired by what? It's a guitar riff that you hear at the start.
You got me, Lydia. You want to take a flyer at this?
I'm thinking because I'm like the resident music girl of my school student media, so I should know. Like that is what everyone calls me since I manage the radio station. But the thing is, when I was first introduced to the Bee Gees, it is through my mother's stress humming, because that's "Staying Alive." It's one of the songs she will just hum whenever she's stressed, and I think I've heard it at like baseball games. So I really don't think I know. But I'm always down for more music knowledge.
They recorded the album I believe in the Bahamas. And the drive from where they were staying to the studio, they had to cross this old wooden bridge, and it was the sound of their car tires going over the bridge that prompted that chunk muted guitar riff that opens Jive Talk, and they were trying to imitate that bit. So, but and the interesting thing about this exhibit is that they're going to be, they have a bunch of about 35 albums that they will be playing, and it's often music that you would not think of as, quote, disco. There's a lot of African music. There's some jazz. There is and James Brown, and then of course they have things like Donna Summer's "I Feel Love," which was kind of the quintessential thing. But it was all about dance and gathering and transcendence and all this stuff. It's a fascinating thing. So what else? You have something coming up for us for Sunday, Jimmie? What else?
Yeah, I took a flyer and the flyer paid off, and that there's always a Bass Reeves conference in Muskogee, an annual conference every year to learn about Bass Reeves and Western history. And I just thought, hey, it'd be cool if I reached out to the show, upcoming Paramount Plus series, Bass Reeves, to see if anybody would want to talk to me, just because this Bass Reeves conference is coming up, even though they're not really connected. And I didn't just get anybody, they gave me the star. I've got a Sunday interview with the British actor, who's going to play Bass Reeves in the Bass Reeves series that will debut, we think, this fall. There's no premiere date set for it quite yet.
This is something that's been in the works for some time, I believe, right?
It's part of the Taylor Sheridan Yellowstone universe, and it's gone through a couple of name changes. It was 1883 Bass Reeves. Now it's Lawmen Bass Reeves. It's going to be an anthology series that will focus on other lawmen after this initial season. But the actor feels very strongly about continuing the legacy of Bass Reeves, who was for decades was kind of a under the radar, legendary, should have been legendary a long time ago, but he's just now getting his due as a legendary figure in history.
Okay, all right. Well, let's see if you all are hungry and need to go someplace on the weekends. We have a review of the Prism Cafe, which is in the Heights neighborhood north of downtown. It's across the street from Fulton Street Books and Coffee. It's a chef-driven little breakfast and lunch place. Everything is made in-house that they can make in-house, or is locally sourced. Very good. Food is excellent. It's worth checking out, and that appears in this week's Tulsa World, available at fine newsstands everywhere and online at tulsaworld.com. Well, that will do it for this week of the Tulsa World Scene podcast. I want to thank you all for listening in, and we will gladly see you later.
Behave.